Welcome back, folks. This is Basir Pirzada, your real estate broker and your mortgage loan officer all in one stop shop. So, we're going to talk about the two Fed meetings back to back in September as well as on October 29th. The Fed cut interest rates by 25 basis points in both the meetings. And so, in the last two meetings, they have cut Fed interest rates by 0.50%. So now the Fed funds rate stands at 4.0%. One thing to note in both the meetings in September as well as the one on October 29th was the Fed chairman was not able to make a convincing case why he was reducing interest rates back to back, because we all know inflation has risen, jobs growth has slowed down. We also know that there's a lot of behind the scenes political drama about Trump's aggressive posture to force Fed to cut interest rate. So two rate cuts back to back were no surprise. We know that GDP growth has grown 1.5% versus 2.5% growth last year. And the indication that GDP growth is slowing down indicates a slowdown in consumer spending. Housing sector activity remains weak. Payroll job growth over the last 3 or 4 months has averaged about 29,000 jobs per month. So such slow job growth combined with a tighter immigration policy, with all the ICE raids everywhere, and low job creations poses a potential for high unemployment in the near future. Inflation, even though it has subsided since its 2022 high, remains well above its 2% target. It's hovering around 3%. Even the Fed chairman is beginning to, he keeps referring to that we will eventually get a 2% inflation goal in 2 years or 3 years. So even they are beginning to lose credibility about their long-term goal of achieving 2% inflation. Tariffs continue to drive inflation. So
based on the incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks. In our SEP, FOMC participants wrote down their individual assessments of an appropriate path for the federal funds rate, based on what each participant judges to be the most likely scenario for the economy. The median participant projects that the appropriate level of the federal funds rate will be 3.6% at the end of this year, 3.4% at the end of 2026, and 3.1% at the end of 2027. This path is 1/4 percentage point lower.
Based on Jerome Powell's his own future assessments, by the end of 2025, they still have one more meeting in December. Their target is to reach a 3.6% Fed funds rate. By end of 2026, 3.4%. By end of 2027, 3.1% Fed funds rate. And by the end of 2028, they're projecting that they'll reach the 2% much coveted inflation target. So again, 3 years from now, there were some tough questions for Jerome Powell in both the meetings, that if the tighter immigration policy is driving the slow jobs growth, then these interest rate cuts would not impact those jobs, because it's immigration policy that's impacting those job cuts. So the Fed's credibility in achieving the elusive 2% inflation goal is eroding, because now you're saying that it will be by the end of 2028, 3 years from now, that we will achieve the 2% inflation target. So basically, you're going to have to wait 3 years to reach your 2% inflation goal.
Michael McKee from Bloomberg Radio and Television. I'm a little confused by your explanation of the Fed cutting rates because of unemployment. If you think that most of what's happening in the employment area is related to immigration, which your rate cuts wouldn't address, how do you see that as more important than inflation, which has remained almost a full percentage point above your target?
Well, I was saying that what's happening in the labor market has more to do with immigration than it has to do with tariffs. That was the question I was answering. So I wouldn't say that all of what's happening in the labor market is due to tariffs. I mean, you clearly have a slowing in it due to immigration. You clearly have a slowing in demand, which is now perhaps more than that in supply, and we know that because the unemployment rate has ticked up. So, that's what I meant by that.
If I can follow up. Every year since 2015, the SEP has forecast that you would hit your target 2 years later. And this year, this SEP says you're going to hit your target 2 years later. 2% does not seem to be in sight. Does that suggest that the 2% target is not really achievable? And does this present any credibility problems for you in telling people that that's what you're going to do if you can never reach it?
Well, I mean, you're right. It does say we're going to get to 2% inflation in 2028, at the end of 28. But that's literally how you put the projections together. You're writing down a rate path, which is designed to create, over the course of the SEP, time frame, 2% inflation and maximum employment too. So that's all that is. No one really knows where the economy will be in 3 years, but the nature of the exercise is to write down policy that you believe would return to the 2% goal over at least by the end of the.
Prices are still continuing to rise. So then why cut interest rates now? Jerome Powell's answer was that we were too focused on only one of our mandates, price stability, and we lost sight of our other mandate, stable employment. So no really a credible answer to rising food and grocery prices. He talked about low hiring, low firing environment. So Fed's over-reliance on past data is adding credence to the narrative that the Fed is always late to act. It just reacts, is not reading the market expectations correctly in real time. Kind of like what Trump always alludes to, too late Powell. He makes fun of Jerome Powell. So there were several questions that were asked about Trump's attempts to politicize the Fed, the Lisa Cook case, and where Trump tried to fire the first African-American Federal Reserve governor. Trump's folks are asking for independent reviews of Fed spending. There was a remodel of a Fed building, and the critics of Federal Reserve, obviously behind the scenes touts of President Trump, are questioning, asking for independent review and audit of that Fed spending for that remodel. Trump's political appointee has been inserted into the Federal Reserve group of decision makers. His name is Stephen Miran, who's holding 2 jobs, one at the White House and one at the Federal Reserve, and that is really an attempt to skew the votes inside the Fed. With Stephen Miran poised to take over the Fed in May 2026, Trump will have his so-called puppet in charge of interest rates. Let me show you an interesting clip.
Are you considering Stephen Miran for a Fed chair? I haven't thought of it too much. He's doing a great job. Just got approved. He's a very good one. The Fed should have done more. Too late. Powell is terrible. He's terrible chair. I think it's just terrible. But despite that, we're powering through it. We have another record stock market today.
I hope you found today's piece entertaining and informative. Please like, share, and subscribe, and stay tuned for more relevant news as they become available. Thank you for watching.